My name is Dave Casebolt. I'm our used vehicle pricing analyst for the group. So I work with our used car departments within each store on pricing, strategy, repricing, that kind of stuff. I've worked for the company a total of about 7 years.
What has it been your history of volunteerism, and how does the whole Red Cross, just explain how that all works.
Sure. I'm known to them because I have done volunteer work for them in the past.
Red Cross?
Right. I started as what they call a disaster action team member back in the early 2000s, which is through local chapters of the Red Cross. So that was the Twin Cities area chapter. And it could be anything, but almost always was a house fire.
What got you interested in the Red Cross in the first place? 15 years ago or whatever it was.
At that time, I think it was really just that I had the free time. I didn't have family commitments that I kind of do now, obviously, and I was young and spry and full of energy, and it didn't seem like a big sacrifice. It didn't cost me any money to do it, and I got a lot out of it. It feels good to be able to help somebody out when they're in a bad way. I've done Habitat in the past with my church, again, a long time ago, and I was down there again in New Orleans itself in spring of 2007 I was going to Augsburg at the time, and the youth ministries group at Augsburg, they planned a trip down to New Orleans.
You were doing security work and post Katrina and running money around, basically?
That was one of the main things I did. That was what I did the most when I was down there.
So what was that like? What did you do?
Well, because these people were scattered throughout the region, often with just the clothes on their backs and very little else, with the whole region in complete disarray, they didn't have money, most of these people. A lot of these people didn't have access to much of anything. And so if you were in one of those shelters as an evacuee all over the place, and we're talking about 1 million people scattered to the wind from the New Orleans area and the Gulf Coast there, and you check into a shelter, you would give your information there and how many people were in your family with you. And eventually, once we were able to figure out where people were and who they were with, you'd get a debit card. It was like a Chase Bank preloaded debit card with anywhere from $200 to $2,000 on it. And what we did as part of the safety and security group was move that money around, take it from our headquarters in Baton Rouge, where it was in a hard room with a lock on the door. We told the security folks that it was computer chips, because we didn't particularly want them, or for instance, even the local police, for that matter, to know that it was filled with $500 million of debit cards. That wasn't information we wanted folks outside of our group to know about, so we kept it close to the vest.
So how much money would you haul? It was just you driving around in a car, basically, or?
Mm-hmm. Anywhere, the smaller runs before we really had our act together, knowing where people were, we were running around, in the ones to tens of thousands of dollars for the most part. And then as September rolled into October and we really had a better handle on where people were, then the loads were progressively bigger, and at one point I had over $60 million worth of those debit cards crammed into the back of a Nissan Armada. It was 18,000 debit cards in banker boxes with the seats removed out of a Nissan Armada, just stuffed to the gills with plastic money.
Wow. Well, were the people pretty happy you guys were there? Or?
Once we got there, they were.
I suppose.
The Red Cross folks weren't the most popular in town just because of the perceived slow pace of relief efforts. And some of that criticism was valid, but it was an unprecedented disaster, and a fellow named Gus and I, over our 5th pot of burnt coffee at 3 a.m, we wrote he and I the standard operating procedures for the safety and security group. No one had ever seen a major American city completely full of water and empty of people.
It does seem a little odd that a couple of 30-year-old Red Cross volunteers would be rolling around with 60 million on them.
It wasn't normal. Nothing about that situation was normal.
So you're down there volunteering to do really helpful work, and it's apparently really dangerous, I would think.
It could have been.
Yeah.
If the wrong people knew what we were doing, it would have probably ended up being less than ideal for us.